Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another video. Today we are doing a speed build, not the final one for the Disney save. I think this was one of the ones that I had done last, but we actually have one more coming up after this, and then like I told you guys before, a bonus video. But this is one of the last few lots in Willow Creek. So this is actually right next to Maldonia Estate, which is the home I built for Prince Naveen's parents, and this is going to be completely different. In fact, it's the only lot in Willow Creek that is based after the movie The Rescuers completely. So we did have a little bit of reference to it when we did the Louisiana Mansion, or the Louisiana Museum. However, that movie was a little bit hard to find things about it that I could actually use in the save file. So some of it does take place in Louisiana, some of it takes place in like New York City, and I think that if I was going to include some of the other characters, I probably would do so in more of like a New York City setting, or possibly, I don't know, we're gonna have a lot of movies that are kind of depicted in New York, but I didn't want to ignore the Rescuers. A lot of my patrons, and we had talked in Discord with my Disney Save Discord patrons, that it was probably cool to maybe include the Rescuers in some way, because so much of it does take place in Louisiana, and there are some references there, and Willow Creek and everything. So it made a lot of sense to try and get something in here, and I played around with a lot of ideas. I did think about doing like a pawn shop for Medusa, but it would have been a retail, and we already have, I think, 2 retail lots in Willow Creek, so I didn't want to do another retail. It just felt like a little bit too much. And the more that I thought about it, the more that I really wanted to try and do one of these like classic steamboat builds. So this is obviously very prevalent in like Louisiana. You would think of these beautiful steamboats, and we even have a couple of pieces. There's one like miniature that I use in the museum, and we have in like the base game. And if you are playing in Willow Creek, every once in a while you will see one of these boats actually go through these little rivers and harbors over here. So really cool. I was actually looking for that giant shell to see if it happened to be in debug mode, and then maybe I could work that into the build. But instead, I figured we might as well just recreate one. So basically, if you know the movie The Rescuers, Medusa, who is a character that is also a part of the Disney save, she actually lives right across the street from this lot, lives in this beat up old abandoned steamboat. And I wanted to include it, but I knew it was going to be a little bit difficult to do it in the way that it had been shown in the Disney movie. In the Disney movie, it's kind of cracked in a certain spot and split in half, and it's really sunken into the water, and it's probably a part of a bigger section of the bayou that I knew I wasn't going to be able to do, especially on this lot, and given that we are running out of space here, and I had to like make do with whatever the lot restrictions were. So I decided that instead we were going to use that as a reference, her original steamboat home, but as part of my Disney save story, she has been relocated. In fact, the bank has kind of taken over that steamboat and repurposed it into a really cool high-end nightclub. So she has the unfortunate circumstance of living in less than luxury. It was kind of like repossessed. And then she gets to live across the street and watch it get turned into like this beautiful high-end nightclub that she is not famous enough to get into, or probably rich enough to afford. So this is more so for our famous Sims of the save. In fact, I think I put one of those get famous restriction doors on it so that only people who were 3 or 4 star celebrities and up could actually get in here. It's a little bit small, but it is like that vintage glamour sort of 1920s, really high-end, beautiful like pops of gold and everything here and there. Probably something that a lot of like socialites would want to go and spend time here and just hang out and get to know other people that are in their social bracket. So a little bit snobby, but that was definitely the intention as well. And I thought that it would just be fun to do a different nightclub, because we do have another nightclub in Willow Creek. We have Other Side, which is the one based after Dr. Facilier, and that is very magic based, a little bit sultry, kind of sexy, really dark, and for everybody. Anybody could go there. This is a little bit more exclusive. So we have 2 different kinds, and I imagine that later on when we add more celebs to the Disney save, or more characters that are going to have really high fame ratings, it will be a pretty popular place amongst all of them. And I'm kind of thinking about that kind of stuff in the back of my head. I imagine that you will want to play amongst the different worlds. Like, that's how I play The Sims. I don't know how you guys play, but I don't restrict myself to one world and say like, oh, I'm only keeping my Sims in this world. Like, I'm building the whole save so that you could potentially go everywhere that you wanted to if you want. If you want to play in the individual worlds and kind of keep the storylines there and really focus on whatever stories you're interested in, that's totally up to you. But I pictured a lot of like the future Disney princesses that'll have like the higher celebrity ratings and some of the other royal characters and anybody else who I feel like might be appropriate for that. Coming here, getting a couple of drinks. I did the chocolate melting station in here, and this was actually the first build that I was able to completely implement ladders. We had gotten the update for ladders, I think that day, and thank God, because this build totally wouldn't have been possible in the way that I wanted to do it without ladders. I can just imagine trying to put in a stair system on this lot and it would have been awful because I knew I wanted it to face diagonally. It was probably ideal because of the lot, the way that it's facing. It's on a corner, but the front facing part of it is off towards the road here, and that meant that the gallery photo is off towards the road as well, which is one of the things I have to think about as a builder. However, I thought it would look really rigid and sort of stiff if I did it completely facing straight forward, and in a lot of the photos that you're shown of the original lot from the Rescuers, it is shown sort of diagonally. So in the Rescuers, it is called the Devil's Bayou, and I did decide to keep that name for this lot so that it is recognizable, and those of you that are big fans of the Rescuers will probably recognize it instantly, but obviously it's important to note that it's probably been updated compared to what Medusa originally had for her home. Hers was like a deep gray color and had cracks all over the place and was really sort of broken in areas. This has been redone. They've polished it, painted it white, added some pops of red here and there. I did keep some of the original integrity and like color scheme of the build for things that I thought couldn't easily be replaced, like the two little I'm not sure what those are called, but like the big black objects in the front that you see on steamboats. I'm no boat expert for sure, so I'm not sure what those are, but they were a darker color with like black on the front of them in the original home, so I decided that I would keep that and just sort of update around it. And this is a little bit of a tricky lot to make work just because we are adding some water here. You want to try to make the water look like it is not random, which means that it's going to be covered a lot in plants. And any moment, I think, we will have a cut where I have done a lot of landscaping to mask the water quite a bit. One thing that I found when I was playtesting this lot is that a lot of the Sims enjoy the water, which I thought by covering around the edges with lots and lots of foliage that I was not going to have Sims swimming. However, they enjoy swimming. So if that bothers you, it might be a little bit of an issue, but I didn't really care. I thought it was kind of funny to see all of the people who couldn't get in because they weren't high enough rated. They would just sort of go and hang around the outside. They can't even get through like the front door area. So it was funny because everybody else who was getting rejected was kind of just swimming in the water all around, and I just thought that that was funny. So back to the ladder situation. We got an update to the game pretty much that day. This was my first attempt to use the ladders. Again, I didn't really think about the fact that it would still be a little bit difficult to use the ladders on a diagonal lot, which is still true. You can't really place them diagonally, which meant that they had to be placed straight forward inside of this. So the placement of the ladders is a little bit awkward, but I just enjoy the way that the lot is facing so much that I didn't feel like it was necessary to fix it. And I also felt like it might be one of those situations where it's kind of like that is how it's already positioned in the water. It's been stationed there for a long time. Even if it got fixed up and sort of put back together, I don't think that it would move or work, and it would kind of be stuck where it is, so they would have to deal with whatever that actually entails, which might mean that if you want access to the other parts of the boat, you might have to move some stuff in kind of an awkward way. So the first ladder is sort of like as you walk in there, they all function, which is all that really matters to me personally. But yeah, ideally I wouldn't have liked them to be in the middle of the rooms. I would have liked them to be up against walls, and it just didn't work out that way, but that's okay. It kind of makes it a unique thing, and it's just really different, and I'm just excited to have ladders, if I'm being honest. For the interior, I did struggle with this a lot, and I really wasn't sure how high-end I wanted to go for this, because in the back of my head, I was thinking of our other movie that takes place in Louisiana, and that would be Princess and the Frog. So for a lot of those builds, I've had like the 1920s in my head, and the Rescuers is like the 80s or 90s, if I can recall correctly. So it's not exactly the same time period, but I didn't really want to theme it too far in like the 80s direction because it can get kind of tacky. And it wasn't like that high-end, glamorous, vintage glamour stuff that I was going for kind of a look. So I had to meet it somewhere in the middle. And we already have the shell. It's already painted to look like a boat. The windows have to be placed where they are because I was trying to replicate the original build. So we have to work around like all of these situations, like a wallpaper interiorly that I wouldn't have found ideal. And we've got some awkward ladder placement, and you just kind of got to decorate around it and make it feel like something that would be high end that people would actually want to come to, and not tacky, cheesy, but just something different that I think a lot of socialites would enjoy. So obviously I wanted to play with the idea of doing like jazz themes in here, and I was originally putting in those little stereos that do play jazz and some of the jazz artwork from base game. I ended up removing them because it just got a little bit too much, and it felt like a lot of the other builds that I've done so far, and I wanted this one to just feel a little cleaner and crisper and like less colors overall, like keep it really neutral with whites and golds. So a lot of the stuff that you guys are actually seeing right now is going to get replaced actually. I did stick with primarily vintage glamour stuff and Get Famous. However, I just felt like it wasn't feeling glamorous enough. I might have even replaced the wallpaper interiorly because I was trying to keep the integrity of the original like outside, and thinking that if it was done one way on the outside, it would probably be the same way on the interior and they wouldn't be able to change it too much. But if you go into the Rescuers movie and you see the inside of Medusa's home, you can actually see that she has the inside painted and the wallpaper painted, and like it's very themed per her on the inside, kind of red and all of that. So I think I did decide to go in with an actual wallpaper later on, and there will probably be a pretty big cut here in a moment where I do some different decorations, and we'll come back and it'll look just a little bit different, a little bit more crisp. And there is also a bathroom on the slot. Thank God that I managed to get fit on the very top floor, which was such a struggle because it was diagonal, it was really small, but we made it work. The second floor is kind of a lounge area. The first floor is really the bar with the dance floor. You've got the older record player there and a couple of seats for the bar. Then the next floor up is your lounge area. Some of the seats, I think, again from Get Famous, but those get replaced with a more neutral color. The gold was just a little bit overwhelming. And the top floor is our bathroom. And then you have the deck areas around as well that I've decorated with a couple of the different little mini bars with the globe and some extra seating and stuff so that you can hang out there at night as well. Oh, one thing I didn't really talk about is the actual water motion, which again, I've used the same idea that I did for Belle's home when I did the little watermill next to her house. I used a bunch of fountains next to these, whatever they're called. They're called like turkey something. They're from Spa Day. They're just like a sculpture piece. I don't know what they're supposed to be, but if you size them up, you can use them as like watermills. And for this, I did want the original motion of like the water flowing on the boat. So when you play with this in live mode, all of the water fountains are hidden in between those little wheels that would be rotating on the boat if it was real, and they would be pushing and pulling the water through to help move the boat as well. So I put a bunch of water fountains in there so that it would spray around and kind of make it look like it did have some motion to it. Even though this boat is completely harbored, it is not moving, non-functional, we don't go anywhere, the boat literally just stays right here, which is just fine because it's old, probably from like early 1920s, 1930s, 40s, so it's probably not in the best shape in general, and better off to just keep it here in the harbor and just keep it as it is. I was a little bit weary about putting this in this neighborhood because this is a mostly residential neighborhood, but right across the street we're going to do one more community lot, and it all kind of fits and flows, and it feels really natural. It just feels like the boat was originally there and they kind of had to make do around it, and then the neighborhood kind of sprung up around that even more. So I think it works. This is one of my favorite lots in Willow Creek. Besides Belle's Village, I really enjoyed this one. I think it's so different than some of the other stuff and really indicative of some of the things that you could probably expect in the future when we get into more of these like fantasy Disney movies that have a lot of magical elements to them, or like less residential ideas to them, that I'm really excited to touch on. So that is basically going to be the build for today. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. If you would like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, the link is in the description box down below, as well as at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that little bell icon below to turn on post notifications so you can get updated every single time I post, and I will talk to you all in the next one.